Right now, the children of tragedy return to school. New location, same name, and new hopes that the survivors of the Sandy Hook shooting can somehow return to normalcy. And next, John Boehner won another term as Speaker of the House today, but in a fairly embarrassing way. We're going to have that story. And later, just over 7 months ago, when Rutgers student Darren Ravi was sentenced to 30 days in jail by a New Jersey judge for spying on his former roommate's tryst with another man, that judge has not spoken out about the case nationally, about the nationally watched decision, until tonight. We're going to have that exclusive interview he did with Fios One. Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman, in tonight for Richard Frunch. Thanks so much for joining us on this Thursday evening, January 3rd. Nearly 3 weeks now since the Sandy Hook tragedy devastated the community of Newtown, Connecticut, and the students of that school went back to school for the first time this morning. Fios One's Carolyn Fortino is in the neighboring town of Monroe near the new Sandy Hook Elementary School with the very latest on what had to be a very emotional day, Carolyn.
That's right, Andrew, it was. And today was the first time that all of the students of Sandy Hook Elementary School were together again since the tragic shooting claimed the lives of 20 of their classmates and 6 of their educators. Now, officials say it was very difficult for parents to send their kids back to school for the first time, but they hope that by getting them back into their normal routines, it would help them move forward. Sandy Hook students returned to hugs and smiles from their teachers, along with gift boxes filled with toys as they walked into school for the first time since the Newtown shooting. The children settled into their old desks in rooms decorated by the same pictures from their old classrooms, but this time they were in a different school in a different town.
Watching them get off the bus, most of the kids were excited. They had seen friends they hadn't seen in a while. They were anxious to get into the hallways and meet up with the other kids. And you could see the teachers had the same response. They were quite excited to see the students all together.
Snowflakes hung from the hallway ceilings with messages sent from children all over the world. Grief counselors walked the hallways and comfort dogs were on hand to help ease the transition for the children. Monroe, Newtown, and other local police departments guarded students and staff on and around school grounds to help everyone feel like they were in the safest school in America.
We don't want them to think this is a police state. We want them to know that this is a school and a school first, and that it's a place that they are to come to learn, enjoy their friends, and grow up.
Now, school officials said that they wanted the children's first day back at school to be as normal as possible, but they did allow parents to come inside their children's classrooms or wait for them in the auditorium if it made them feel more at ease. In Monroe, I'm Carolyn Fortino. Andrew, let's send it back to you.
All right, Carolyn, thanks very much. This day, not a difficult one, not just for the children returning to school, but understandably for their parents as well. Listen to this story. When first grader Lauren Milgram headed off to school this morning, her mother followed the bus all the way and then spent the whole day with her daughter in class.
I haven't gotten that far yet about not being with them. I just need to stay with them for a while.
Rationally, you know something like this is a very improbable event. But that still doesn't change the emotional side of the way you feel.
A measure of those emotions shared by parents all over the country. And in the wake of the Sandy Hook shooting, some school districts are beefing up their own security measures. Starting yesterday, students in the town of Marlborough, New Jersey were greeted back to school by armed guards. This security initiative could last 60 or 90 days or even longer if successful. Meanwhile, armed police officers have been installed in schools across the country, from North and South Carolina to Tennessee and even schools in Florida. Which begs the question, is this the future of school security, and what should school security look like in the 21st century? For that and much more tonight, we want to bring in tonight's panel. Jeannie Zaino returns to us tonight. She is a dean and professor of political science at Iona College. Welcome back, Jeannie. Dominic Carter, a political journalist and author, and Gian-Carlo, a former advisor to both Presidents Bush Jr. and Sr. Welcome all, and a quick warning, Jeannie's voice is escaping her tonight, so we'll have to listen very carefully when Jeannie talks. Not that we don't always when you're here. First of all, let me start with just the return to school of Sandy Hook students today. It's been just about 3 weeks since the shooting. We talked in the days afterwards how everything was going to change, how there were going to be changes to the law. 3 weeks later, nothing has changed. Do you get a feeling like the sentiment, the push for changes may be waning a little bit as we get further away from the tragedy?
I don't think so. I mean, it's only been a few weeks. We have to give them a little bit of time. We're waiting for Vice President Biden to come back with the commission that he's chaired, and then it will go before Congress and the president and so on. But we have to give it a little bit of time. I don't think any of us thought realistically there'd be a change by now.
But do we think there's still the same enthusiasm for a re-examination or a change in gun laws since Newtown?
I think that there is. I think that there's something intangible about this particular tragedy. It just feels different from so many of the others, and I think this was the tipping point for many people in this country that something has to be done. It remains to be seen, obviously, what that something is, but I don't think the citizenry is going to let our elected officials off the hook until they answer the call.
That said, I would just suggest that the Congress has not been very active, and I don't have much hope that the new Congress is going to be much more active than the old Congress. So while I agree, citizens want action, and you read these horrible stories, and I think as parents we can all, sympathize and empathize with these people. Are we really going to see legislation that addresses this issue in a comprehensive way? I am not convinced, looking at the new Congress, that that is going to happen until and unless you either have a all-Democratic Congress or all Republican Congress, and that's not going to happen in this one.
I'm inclined to agree with you on that more than perhaps I'd even like to.
My voice is bad?
Well, and also because of what you're saying. Okay, we talked about Marlborough, New Jersey, and other schools using armed guards and putting armed guards in. We know that New York City has police officers in some schools. Do we like the idea of armed guards in schools, or is that a little bit too far for comfort?
I think, like all things involving education, those decisions are best made at the local level, at the school board level. And for some districts and for some schools, armed security is going to be the way to go. It's going to give parents comfort. It may even bring the faculty comfort and the students comfort. In other districts, it's not going to be the right decision. And I think that the country has to be prepared for that there are going to be disparate solutions to this problem.
As a rule of thumb, I don't feel comfortable at all when and the educator at the table, I think, is the best one to answer this question. But whenever you mention guns in the classroom or guns in school, I think that's a recipe for a disaster. But if we're at the day and age where this is a necessity, and which some will argue that it clearly is, some will, I think the best blueprint for doing that would be the way the NYPD, the New York City Police Department, does that. They have a separate division that's called school safety. They're at each and every high school in New York City, and they have the metal detectors, but they're not armed, like many of the state university colleges where they have their own police forces, but they are not armed. So there are one or two, I believe, upstate that do carry guns. And there are also some schools that are notorious for violence, or there's been violence in the past, where the NYPD has a school officer there. So if we're at the day where it's required to have someone with a gun in a school, I'd rather have it be, one, deferred to the local administrator, like you said, but then two, let it be a police officer. I don't think an armed guard is the right answer here.
Yeah, I agree about the local issue, but I think the issue is going to be this enthusiasm to get change is going to be pushed to the national level, and I don't see a lot of change happening in this regard at the local level, and I think funding is going to be a major part of that question. Do we have the funding? The states are just so strapped at this point, but it's a real issue, and I totally sympathize with those parents who want to have that kind of protection. But you really have to wonder if we can afford to do that at this point.
For all our elected officials out there who are watching, here's a potential solution. If the federal government would appropriate money to allow school districts to use it in as flexible a fashion as possible, now they may have to attach certain parameters to that appropriation, but if there was a pot of money that school districts could use according to the way that they think would best secure their schools, I think that's one potential answer.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here on RFL. We want this conversation to continue online, and we want your comments on it as well. Head to our Facebook or our Twitter page, or both, and sound off. How would you enhance school security? We will get to some of your reaction online and perhaps in an upcoming episode. When we come back, we're going to head to Washington and to Capitol Hill, where the new Congress was sworn in today. After one of the least effective congressional sessions on record, we're asking if the next Congress will do any better. Couldn't possibly do any worse, could it? Don't answer that. We'll be right back.